I'm only looking for this grave for one reason, and it was a little hard to find. And that is for the grave of the Airedale, Razzle Dazzle. I had a dog I loved more than any living creature. His ashes are spread in all his favorite places, so I know what one will do for the love of a dog. It's easy to think of loving your dog as a modern indulgence, but this grave demonstrates that it's not modern at all. Dead for over 100 years, Mr. and Mrs. Brant provided a bequest for their beloved dog and obviously chose a good caretaker. Old Charlie, a janitor at the Eltavar Hotel, who dutifully buried Razzle Dazzle at the right-hand side of his master when the dog passed 7 years later. The Rim Trail, just west of the Hermit's Rest bus stop, is one of my favorite places to take the pre-hike hike. But today we're doing something different. We're looking for one of the secret sites of Grand Canyon. This crevice is pretty in its own right, and if you look down, it frames out Bright Angel Trail and Indian Garden. The sign the turnoff is coming up soon. Here's marker 3310 on the Trail of Time. I have a separate video about the Trail of Time, but that's our sign to turn off the trail and look for the secret site. There is a faint path here. We're not the first ones here, but it's not well traveled. And here we are. The secret site we're looking for, hidden in plain sight, with a clear view of Eltavar Hotel. We're going to see why in just a minute. Let's see what we can find out. Here's Charles A. Brant, passed away in 1921. Olga, his wife, died in 1920. And here's their statement. In this place, doubt is impossible. Else why all these wonders, the surpassing beauty, this grandeur, this deep peace, this confident repose? No, here is the Spirit of God. Here one must believe. By Mr. Charles A. Brant. The Grand Canyon causes some debate. Some think the canyon stands for the fact God must exist. Others, perhaps those who've walked down the Trail of Time, think it's evidence that God does not exist. Mr. Brant and his wife were from Russia and ran the Eltavar Hotel, the only hotel in the early 1900s, and quite the first-class accommodation. And we're not just here for them, but for one more gravestone to kind of demonstrate the universality of emotions we feel today, love for our pets. Let's step back and take a look for Razzle Dazzle, their beloved dog. And here he is, Razzle Dazzle, the faithful and beloved Airedale pet of Mr. and Mrs. Brant. August 16th, 1928. They loved that dog, but he was quite young. He outlived them for quite a few years. It's said the Brants were well liked at Grand Canyon, and thus were given special dispensation for the location of this grave outside of the Grand Canyon graveyard, with this spectacular view of the canyon and of Eltavar Hotel, where they worked for most of their lives. This grave has the naturalistic stones, both the marker and the stones over the grave, that we find in the Grand Canyon graveyard, very appropriate to the area, and to some degree representing the values of the people who spent their time here. Since 1920, when the gravesite was selected, and 1921, when Mr. Brant passed away, these trees have grown in the more than 100 years that passed. But if we step forward, we see why they chose this site. A great view of the two buildings that were here. Eltavar Hotel and Cold Studio are the only buildings on the South Rim that would have been here in 1920 and 1921. They could forever oversee the place they made their home and the location they loved, the Grand Canyon. We'll put this symbolic chain back in place, respecting the graves of Mr. and Mrs. Brant, and wishing them well wherever they may reside today, be it here or in some higher place. It's a windy day today, but this is a spectacular sight. The rangers seemingly don't want you to know about this secret site, but I think it has great merit and a great statement that the love of our pets that we feel now in the 2000s existed in the early 1900s as well. It's a universal emotion, the love of a faithful pet, the love of one's spouse, the love of a location. Quite a lesson today.